Hi, it's Chris Watkin, and I'm back again with John Durrant, who is an estate agent who started his estate agency career in 1968, owned his own estate agency, and then subsequently started up his own PropTech firm called Dr. Photo. John, you were an estate agent in 1968.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me today, by the way.
Right.
What's the difference in estate agency from the late 60s to the early 2020s? Talk to me.
Okay. Well, first of all, I feel like I'm on the Graham Norton couch. I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to be Tom Cruise. Estate agency in the end of the 1960s was very different to what it is today. For example, property details, property marketing was dreadful. The photography was non-existent. It would take 2 weeks to get a house onto the market.
You had those printing machines.
Printing machines, that's right. They were awful, and
no photographs, boys and girls. You basically used to turn a photograph into like little dots, and it had this lovely smell, which again you could become addicted to. And you just rolled them round like this.
Yeah, that's right. And the sending out details. Of course, you couldn't do that digitally those days. They had to be sent out through the post. And you'd have a machine that you had to first of all, we had to write the envelopes, and then later on, the innovation was that we'd have the machine that you would stamp out the addresses of the properties onto the envelopes or onto sticky labels and stick those on. And as I say, it'd take 2 weeks to get a property on the market, but nobody seemed to worry. And you would have a situation where offers usually were accepted on houses by people with properties to sell. It was not unusual.
Did you take the property off the market?
No, take it off the market. That's right. It'd be, it was just a very much more relaxed type of.
Because obviously, in the 60s, probably most of the estate agents were probably tended to be chartered surveyors that had an estate agent's arm, or the odd estate agent that set their own up.
Yeah,
there's no corporates, were there?
That's right. So no, well, I was Manning Co, and I think we had 22 offices at the time. WPA Gase would drop by one of the offices every now and again, and you'd have to stand up and say, "Good morning, Mr. A. Gase. Good morning, Mrs. Bridger." He'd always have a secretary with him, drive up in his roller, it was a very different vibe. It was like, "Are you being served?" And as I say, the houses to sell situation, accepting offers on those, and just eventually they would sell and people would move. I don't recall any kind of drama about that at all. Obviously contrasted with today, everything probably because of the Amazon situation. You ask for something and it arrives on your doorstep the following day. People expect the houses to be delivered in the same way. So that is really the major difference.
What was the feeling like? Was it a more kinder time in estate agency?
Oh, it was very much kinder. So my first boss was a guy called Fred Wiltshire, a big guy. He looked like one of the Crays. Had slick back grey hair, very smart. And I remember him saying to me, all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy. And I carried that through with me. It meant for me that when I got my first office, which was in Aldershot, got my first office, I said to Paul Locke that it needed decorating, and he said, "Here's 30 quid, go and do it." I was what you would call a man's moonie. I would do anything for Manning Company at the time. I loved it. And he actually said to me, though, one day that with their brand, they could employ monkeys to sell houses. And I saw the kind of writing on the wall when he said that, which was not a good thing to be saying to people, I didn't think.
Was this in the 70s then?
It was early 70s, exactly right. It kind of flipped.
Because if you think about it, the early 70s in terms of the property market is very similar to what we are hitting now in terms of high inflation.
Yeah. We had Anthony Barber as the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, and there'd been very high inflation. He'd tried to get the economy back on. It would be a little like Liz Truss would have achieved perhaps if she'd been able to carry on, and perhaps that's what the market saw. But we had very high inflation, and then it started to grind to a halt, and then we had a Middle East war. And we had an energy crisis,
wasn't it?
oil crisis, and this is very much like what we're experiencing today, and it makes me very nervous and anxious for the property market going forward.
Why I mean, we're filming this in the last day of October 2022. This will probably be coming out towards the end of November. Why are you nervous about the property market? Because of what you know in the 70s?
Because of what I knew in the 70s. So in the 70s, in the lead up, I was in Basingstoke office at the time before I'd taken my office at Aldershot. So I was in Basingstoke, and we'd had 400 houses to sell. We'd gone down to 6. I remember going out and photographing a property. By now we had a Polaroid camera. This was the innovation. Polaroid camera. You'd have to stick it under your arm to warm it up to get it fixed or whatever. And by the time I got back to the office, somebody had noticed an estate agent taking photographs. They'd phoned around all the estate agents, and the property was under offer. So that was, the market as was, probably very similar to what it's been recently here. Yeah. So we went through that, and then we had the Anthony Barber situation, and the market popped. Basically, we had the Middle East war. And within the space of a year or two, we'd gone to 600 houses. And we were taking houses on left, right, and centre. It seemed like Christmas to us because, of course, we'd had a famine of them. And we didn't think that we couldn't see there was anything wrong. And this is what makes me anxious about today, because I feel that estate agents, if they will get the houses, more houses coming onto the market. The timing.
I mean, stock is increasing. I think we've gone from 440,000 on the market in May 22 to now 530,000.
Yeah.
It's growing.
Yeah. So what happened then was that you would get people who were desperate to sell their properties, and they would price their properties accordingly. Other people would look at those and would think, oh, bloody hell, that is good. Let's try and buy it. But then they'd want yesterday's price.
Yeah, top dollar for theirs.
Top dollars for that, and you end up with loads and loads of offers on properties that you can't process because these nutcases very often who would ask 10% more for their property because they're in anticipation that somebody might come along and offer 10% less, which was the price they actually wanted. And you end up in a situation that was totally unsustainable.
And do you think that could happen in 2022, 23?
I'm desperately frightened that it will. And if agents don't take control of that situation, then that's exactly what will happen.
But estate agents hate losing properties to a competitor.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen is that there will be bucket shops who will take anything onto the market. They'll end up spending their money trying to sell something that's not sellable because of the price, and those people will end up selling at a lower price than they could have achieved today because they'll be chasing the market down. And it's just a total waste of time and the agent's money. If they don't understand that they're wasting their money, then there is no point in it. And it could be that you would want to take a few houses on just to say that you've got 20 or 30 instructions. You could do that.
And you could have, at least you have a big market share graph, wouldn't you?
They would have a big market share graph. But then so it felt like Christmas to us. We were taking houses on left, right, and centre. But then what happened was that obviously the hierarchy realised that they were spending a lot of money and not actually getting a lot of sales, and they just told us to just disinstruct ourselves from everything. Can you imagine that? It's all of those houses, all of that money that was spent on doing that, and then being told to disinstruct yourself.
So, what would your message be to any estate agents if the market does toughen up? Don't take it on overpriced.
Yeah, just proceed with great caution, because if you don't, then you, you know, agents tend to talk about supply and demand. Yes, I understand that there are more houses coming on, but you're not seeing an uptick like that. Not yet, but you know, I use the term frog boiling. You know, you put the frog into cold water and then just turn the heat up gradually. It doesn't notice that it's being boiled, and that's the situation that we're in currently, I believe. You know, the property market. I've also used the term. You know, it's like stopping an oil tanker. It doesn't just happen overnight. It happens gradually, and then you think, oh my God, this has happened, and we're in a bit of a dire strait. If you take houses on indiscriminately, then what happens is that you end up with the market taking a lot longer to recover than it would do if you took control of it in the first place.
Because of that hangover of overpriced properties.
You've got all the overpriced properties. You're trying to service vendors. You're trying to explain why you're not actually getting offers on properties, and they're blaming you for it. You spent your money. They haven't got any skin in the game then, but they're blaming you for it. I think I think it's just an unintelligent thing to be doing.
Just before we finish, what about business generation, door knocking, that sort of thing? Did that happen back in the 60s and 70s?
No, that smacked of desperation and was considered unprofessional.
Okay, I think an awful lot of people still think that, don't they?
Yeah, well, they do, yeah.
Okay, what about cooperation between estate agents?
Oh, it's great. You know, we even helped other estate agents to open up. So another estate agent would move into the town and we would give them sub-instructions. Or we would
give them some instructions.
Sub-instructions. So if we, you know, if they had nothing to sell, which they wouldn't do.
Why would you do that?
It seemed like the nice thing to do. I say it was a kinder time, and the world was big enough, and you know we weren't bitching after each other. Do you
think it was a happier time?
It was a much happier time.
Or are you just having that with rose-tinted glasses because you're in your 70s and looking back?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think I would have been a man's Mooney if I had been wearing, if I were wearing rose-tinted glasses now. I don't think I'd have been decorating the office. I think I'd have probably found another career if that had been the case.
John, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. I hope you've enjoyed that brief insight between the 1960s and the 2020s between estate agency. I think a lot has changed, but at the same time, not a lot has changed. Thank you very much.
That's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for asking.